Hello everybody, my name is Brittany Gunnels and I just wanted to take some time to let you guys get to know me and share my experiences as the Unorthodox teacher with you. I have had a very comprehensive exposure to different methods of education. I attended a typical small rural school from kindergarten through my junior year. And then I went on to complete high school with one of the first distance education programs, and yes, we actually used snail mail to correspond. I initially attended a brick and mortar traditional college and then transitioned to a completely online program with WGU, where I graduated with my bachelor's and my master's. I'm also a mother to 3 boys, of whom have all attended regular public school but are now homeschooled using an online curriculum. So as you can see, I have seen it and experienced it all. Currently, I am a certified biology teacher for middle and high school students, but I've had a very unique exposure to teaching a variety of subject areas. I started my career in education as a long-term substitute in the ag classroom. I've tried to remember any ag experiences in my junior high and high school years, and I am still coming up with a big fat blank. It really just wasn't my thing, in spite of growing up on a ranch in Texas. But I do love a challenge. As an avid learner, I jumped right in, and I usually learn the content the night before I taught it to my students, but hey, it worked. After a semester there, I was moved into the special education classroom as yet another long-term substitute. I've always really admired special education teachers and their heart and passion for what they do, but honestly never really considered it as an option for me. But this turned out to be a defining experience in becoming the teacher that I am. I developed an intense passion for figuring out what makes a student tick, differentiating instruction and problem solving until I found a way to make the content accessible for each of my students. I know we all pledge a belief that all students can learn, but being in a classroom with the students who struggle on a daily basis moved me from a mere theoretical belief to accepting that motto as an undeniable truth. I was then moved into a math remediation role where again I got to help students with highly differentiated instruction. It was at this point that I realized I was different. To be quite honest, I didn't really understand the traditional teaching role. I found myself spouting a disclaimer every time I talked about the role of education with, I know I'm kind of weird, but I think, and obviously, some people strongly disagreed with my ideas about learning and teaching. Some told me my ideas were interesting, but that they really wouldn't work in an actual classroom setting. Some agreed with me on a theoretical basis, but preferred I stick to the teaching norms, and maybe 2 people encouraged me to follow through with my different ideas. When I started teaching science, I was elated. I finally got to teach something I actually knew about and loved. I received the typical first-year teacher warnings and directions to maintain strict order and use rigorous instruction, and to stick to the strategies that students were used to. I tried, but I just didn't have it in me. Like I said, I'm different. I had a difficult time shutting students down when they had questions. I felt like students learned more when we discussed a topic rather than having me lecture on and on about it. I allowed students to show me that they had attained a learning goal in whatever way they could do that best. Some of my students built models, some created videos, some wanted to teach it to me, some would simply ask if they could test orally, and I generally complied with their requests regardless of if they had a IEP or a 504 plan. I knew my students had gotten it, but I couldn't make myself only use a written test. They were so smart, and sometimes those tests didn't reflect what I knew they were capable of and the learning achievements I knew they had reached. I wanted to know what they were interested in and then work that into my next lesson. So I broke the mold. I decided to pursue my master's degree in learning and technology partly because I still didn't feel like I fit in. I decided that maybe I was just a little too weird to be a classroom teacher. But one day on an airplane, I was sitting next to this sweet woman who was reading an education book that I had just finished. She sat silently beside me through most of the flight as I broke the rules and used space time to teach my classes. But after I had finished, she struck up a conversation with me where I learned that she had been a teacher for over 20 years and was currently working in administration. Um, and she asked me about my methodology because she said she hadn't ever seen anyone conduct class the way she had just witnessed. I tried my best to explain myself, feeling a little ashamed of how different I was, and concluded with my usual disclaimer of just being weird, almost as if I was acknowledging I knew what I was doing wasn't right or typical. But as we got ready to land, she told me, "You're not weird, you're simply unorthodox. But that's nothing to be ashamed of, and that I just needed to continue being me and teaching my classes in the way that I had already established." As I continued my studies through my master's program, I learned that I wasn't completely off base. It was an acceptable thing to teach using more questions than answers. I figured out that I was a staunch advocate for problem-based learning. As I began my capstone, I wanted to explore these nagging questions of why am I so different? Why do I feel so weird? Am I just not cut out for teaching, or is there something else that made me feel so out of place? And as nerdy as it may be, I love to research it. Everything, actually, not even just education. But one particular reoccurring theme really caught my attention. When studying why teachers teach the way they do, multiple studies found that teachers teach in the way that they were taught. I spent a considerable amount of time contemplating this idea and finally started to get some answers to those nagging questions. Throughout my time at Western Governors University, I was exposed to some of the best problem-based instruction I believe to be in existence. I didn't just study for a test, I solved a problem. I was encouraged to ask questions, and rather than answers, I was given guiding questions that led me to explore and construct my own knowledge. And when I was struggling with a concept, my instructors took just a few minutes to get to know me, and then they used that knowledge to frame the concept in a personally meaningful way. So when I began teaching, I employed the same strategies with my own students. And suddenly I became proud that I was unorthodox. I was unknowingly mirroring the qualities of my teachers that prepared me for my career. And born of that realization, I took hold of a mission. If research has proven the effectiveness of problem-based learning, we have to make it accessible to teachers before they can pay it forward to their students and have their students get all of the benefit that the instructional strategy has to offer. Above all else, I am a passionately curious person that believes the beauty of the world exists in passions and uniqueness and discovery and exploration. I was encouraged to embrace those qualities in myself and want nothing more than to encourage those qualities in my colleagues who have committed themselves to the current and future success of every student that walks through their doors. I can't wait to get to know you too, and I hope you enjoy the course, and please leave a comment and let me know if it's just me or if there's some more different people out there.